Looking for the fuel of tomorrow? Well, we may have the answer today. That's this week on Motoring 2006.
TSN's Motoring 2006 is brought to you by the new Q from Quaker State. Unleash all your horses. And Michelin, a better way forward.
In this idyllic setting, it's hard to believe the world has a pollution problem. Then again, we're a long way from Toronto, New York, or Mexico City. Needless to say, it's the car that gets most of the blame for the bad air, although, as we have said before, today's modern vehicle equipped with clean fuel is almost emission-free. We just have too many on the road. So the big story these days is a search for that perfect alternative fuel. Well, recently we were in Paris for the Challenge Bibendum, which brought together engineers and designers from around the world trying to find a solution to sustainable mobility into the future. One vehicle that caught our eye was a Mercedes-Benz Concept. Cool design, but many were shocked to find that it wasn't a hybrid, electric, or fuel cell vehicle. In fact, it was powered by what one engineer called the perfect fuel for today. And that fuel is diesel.
This is our bionic car. We did that as a study, copying, let's say, or adopting the exterior shape of a fish, of the boxfish, because that fish is very aquadynamic, very aerodynamic, and we transfer that to a car. That gives us the opportunity with that boxfish shape to build up a car with a, let's say, a real four-seater car. You can store additional luggage therein, and we want to try and do that reduction of weight, improvement of aerodynamic, and improvement of fuel consumption. This is the main issue for that. This is powered by the modern diesel engine we know. It's a very clean, it's the cleanest diesel. It's a diesel, a very modern one, equipped with blue tech technology that allows us to reduce particulates and to reduce NOx emission rate. That emission from that diesel car is comparable to a gasoline engine.
Without question, every single car I've ever driven that had a diesel derivative has been better than the gasoline-powered one. Unfortunately, in North America, specifically the States, until they get rid of the stigma that comes with diesel and stop thinking about it as a truck fuel, the instant they'll recognize the true benefits. I mean, you can take just about any diesel and run it with as much torque and as much horsepower, especially something like the Jeep Grand Cherokee that they sell in Europe, which uses the Mercedes-Benz 3-litre direct injection diesel. This thing has got more get up and go than the Hemi. It actually got more torque than the Hemi. You drive the thing, it's quiet, it's pleasant, it doesn't make the clatter, it's not the diesel of old, it's the diesel of new. And as soon as you can get rid of the stigma attached to the fuel, then people will start to realize that, hey, diesel is the real thing. When you do think of diesel as being an alternate fuel, you get as good gas mileage out of a diesel as you do out of any of the hybrids without the complexity. It's a normal car. It'll start at -40. Try that with a fuel cell. Doesn't work.
Fuel cell, you saw those cars here, you maybe drove that. They are very attractive, but it is the technology for the next 10-15 years. What we do have today and what we should use really on the market, this is diesel technology, the modern diesel technology, and this has nothing to do with the technology 15 or 20 years ago, which was, let's say, lazy cars, dirty cars. This is completely different to that. Low emission rate, low fuel consumption, therefore the technology for today.
Man, I wish I had the geranium franchise for this country. They're so beautiful. There must be something in the air. More from Austria when we return.
One of Kia's claims to fame is the speed with which it's revamped its entire product portfolio.
On this edition of Test Drive, we take a look at yet another new product. This time around, the all-new 2007 Kia Magentis. While it's true the Magentis is not the most attractive car to be launched in the past while, it does follow that age-old rule of thumb, and that being about beauty being more than skin deep. When you take the time to explore the underlying package, this car impresses rather nicely. Fog lights, attractive aluminum wheels, 8-way power driver's seat, tilt and telescopic steering wheel, a power moonroof, traction control and a very good electronic stability control are all a part of the premium package. Now if you bought the items individually, they would cost you a small fortune. When you bundle them up into the premium pack and add it to the base LX car, well, $2,000 is all it'll take out of your wallet, which makes it one heck of a bargain. Power for the Magentis LX tested comes from a 2.4-litre inline-4 that uses the latest technology. Along with its twin overhead cams comes variable cam timing on the intake side. The result is a decent 161 horsepower and 163 pound-feet of torque at 4,250 RPM. The good news is the overall performance. It will hustle the Magentis to a metric ton in under 10 seconds, and it will pass a slower moving vehicle without needing a country mile of clear road to do it. The drawback is that the engine really does not like to work at low RPM, and so it requires a heavy boot to get the desired launch off the line. The solution, at least for those who do not worship fuel economy, is the optional 2.7-litre V6 engine. You know, when you look at the cost of this car, around $25,000 as equipped, you get an awful lot of content and very good fit and finish. For instance, on the content side, along with power locks, windows, mirrors, cruise control on the steering wheel, redundant audio controls, a good radio, you find some other stuff that you normally expect in more expensive cars. Outside temperature gauge, for instance, it really does speak very highly of how far the affordable car has come. It used to be cheap and cheerful, now it's affordable, but very cheerful. Either of the engines come with a slick-shifting 5-speed automatic that features a manual mode. Again, it works well enough, it almost makes the manual transmission and its clutch a redundant offering. The brakes follow this orderly lead, as they feature a decent anti-lock brake system and stopping distances that measure a commendable 40.2 metres from 100 kilometres an hour. You know, considering the dimensions of this Kia Magentis, there's actually a lot of room in the rear seat. The seats are far enough off the floor, you've got somewhere for your toes, there's plenty of knee room and headroom's a non-issue. However, it is not the 5-seater that it's advertised, and primarily because of the dome centre section, it eliminates a lot of the headroom, and the poor guy that sits in the middle, they got nowhere to put their feet because of the tunnel intrusion. On a more positive note, well, split folding rear seat backs and a large 14.8 cubic foot trunk. Riding on front struts, multiple rear links and anti-roll bars at both ends, the Magentis handles as well as any of its peers. True, there is some initial body roll and understeer is not too difficult to induce, in spite of the sensibly sized 205/60R16 tyres. However, once the lot takes a set, the Magentis proved to be quite good through the pylons. The fact it comes with that aforementioned electronic stability control system furthers the handling cause. The same orderly approach applies if the worst actually does happen. Along with dual front airbags, the Magentis earns side seat-mounted airbags as well as full-length drop-down side curtains, which is a lot more than many cars in this segment. You know, it used to be that cost and content went hand in hand. The higher the content, the higher the cost. This Magentis proves that that's no longer the case. As well as getting a decent driving car, you also get a whack of content. Everything from the usual power items all the way through to things like an outside temperature gauge, heated seats, anti-lock brakes, a full suite of airbags, and indeed you also get electronic stability control. The bottom line, this new Magentis represents a great bang for the buck buy.
Time to update our long-term Hyundai Sonata. You know, one of the benefits of working on a program like motoring is that we get to drive so many different cars. And as you might expect, they become real popular in the neighborhood. But you know, it's also a great opportunity to get some feedback. Well, one of my neighbors for the past 22 years is a man called George Mangos. He's now 92 years old. I have never seen him react to any vehicle in my driveway as he has to the Sonata. He simply loves the looks of it, and I got to agree. But when it comes to driving, the new 3.3-liter V6 pumps out an energetic 235 horses, a big jump over the old 2.7 V6 with 170 horsepower. I mean, this vehicle has everything, and it begins at only $21,000. As one journalist commented, in 20 years, Hyundai has come from the Pony to the Sonata. It took the Japanese 30 to 40 years to do the same thing. We'll have a pet peeve on the next update.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Chrysler Imperial Concept Sedan. Starting with the 300C platform and stretching it 17 inches, our goal for the Chrysler Concept was to create a truly glamorous automobile, worthy of the classic Imperial name and designed to elevate the Chrysler brand to a new level of refinement and luxury. From the front, Chrysler Imperial presents the most dramatic expression of the Chrysler grille to date, flanked by freestanding LED headlamps and jeweled LED turn signals and driving lamps. The Imperial's boat-tail rear-end design truly gives it a personality unlike anything else on the road today, with the freestanding classic Imperial-style gun-sight tail lamps. Hinged at the A and C pillar, the wide doors can be opened, as you can see, to 90 degrees to reveal a panoramic view of the interior. The interior theme is elegant simplicity, accented by LED mood lighting. Everything the driver needs to know is displayed within a large 2-gauge cluster reminiscent of those found in classic Chrysler Imperials. So that, ladies and gentlemen, is our conceptual reinterpretation of a great Chrysler marque, the Chrysler Imperial concept vehicle.
For the 9.3 and the 9.5, well, certainly for the 9.5, a facelift it's about time. It's important to keep products fresh in a segment. You know, that entry Lux segment is extremely competitive, and it just gets worse, you know, by the week. And you know, the interiors had gone kind of stale, and so you know, this is important as a stopgap measure to keep the 9.5 you know, competitive in a segment where, you know, there's no end to the good products that are out there. The 9.3 is a product that should be good with Canadians, but especially a vehicle that like the Combi with has the wagon capabilities. Canadians are notoriously fussy about how they spend their money. They do not buy vehicles that don't meet a lot of utilitarian functional needs, and so a wagon is a perfect product for Canadian buyers, and it should really be incremental sales. They should add Saab buyers in the country by simply by having that product in the market.
Well, if you look at the 9.3, we really have a full lineup of powertrains at this point. Of course, gearboxes, but also on the engine side. The top-of-the-line high-feature V6 engine is really a state-of-the-art engine. Our typical 4-cylinder turbo is also very modern and with a high performance in every category. The 9.5 is, if you look for the Canadian markets, we're focusing on our 2.3 turbo, which delivers 260 horsepower, a very modern but also a very reliable engine that we've had several years, and it fits very, very nicely with the 9.5.
Saab's challenge is to stop being considered quirky and to start being considered interesting with a broad base of buyers. Quirky means weird, and weird doesn't translate into sales and popularity with, fairly wealthy and well-to-do buyers. So the trick for Saab is to make the brand feel, look, and be relevant for people who don't like to be considered quirky but do like to be considered interesting. Saab needs to have products that are clearly differentiated from any other GM or GM partner products. So a Saab 92X, isn't clearly differentiated from a Subaru, and a Saab 97X isn't clearly differentiated from a GMC Envoy. So that's the next step for Saab, is to have products that are unique and not quirky but interesting.
We've been talking a lot about diesel fuel this week. I've heard a lot of opinions as to the pros and the cons, but does anybody ask the guy who's got to fix them, like our man in the Quaker State garage, Bill Gardiner? Well, this week our question for Bill is, has diesel fuel improved that much, especially from a maintenance point of view?
Well, Brad, diesels inherently are low maintenance. I mean, they have no spark ignition system to worry about, and they are very low maintenance. Now, when you build an engine stout enough to be able to take 22-to-1 compression ratio, which is typical for a diesel engine, or even greater than that, the bottom end of the engine has to be very husky to be able to take that kind of compression, and that also makes for very long engine life, provided you maintain it. So, a diesel engine can be a good thing in a lot of ways, but one thing that's going to be a definite problem down the road is the particulate. Now, particulate is that black, when you see the black sooty smoke from a diesel engine, what you're seeing is those fine, tiny little particles of soot in the exhaust, and that particulate is a known carcinogen. In other words, it's cancer causing if you have long-term exposure to it. Now, over the short term, diesel exhaust, although you may find the smell of it offensive, is less harmful for you than gasoline engine exhaust. But over the long term, that particulate is known to cause cancer, and that's something that they're already wrestling with now, and it's going to be a problem in the future. So the way that I see it certainly is that for big rigs and any heavy-duty equipment, of course, diesel is the one and only way to go. That's the way everything is. For light-duty vehicles, I still like gasoline engines. For things like pickups and cube vans, well, there's a distinct advantage to diesel because when they're loaded, they get great fuel economy. In a gasoline engine, when you load it up heavily, fuel economy goes in the dumpster. So if you're pulling a lot of weight or carrying a lot of cargo and you're doing a lot of miles, you pretty much got to have a diesel these days if you want to make any money in the trucking business. That's for sure. It's the only way. Now, the first generation of light-duty truck diesels, vans, cube vans, and pickups, they weren't too good. Even the second generation in some manufacturers wasn't too good. Some manufacturers like Dodge, for example, bought known good engines like Cummins to alleviate that problem. GM had some pretty big problems with the first couple of generations of theirs. Hopefully they've got the handle on it now and reliability will come up to where it should be. Till next week, I'm Bill Gardiner for Motoring 2006.
You ready? Yeah. The technical breakthrough was the possibility to use a lot of power with very light weight. That's really the thing we want in a sports car. And thanks to lithium-ion technology and a lot of management, electronic management, cooling, recharging, regenerating, we could do this car. So the fact that there is no specific noise is not a problem, you know? We couldn't do this car 5 years ago. So it's really something very new, very exciting to drive, and we could, for the first time in the history of car, could be something we could compete against petrol engine, gasoline engine, and so it's something very interesting.
Boy, isn't that beautiful? That great scenery. It's so clean, it's so pure, it's so natural. This is pretty much what Austria looks like. And you might wonder, how does that map on the fact that 80% of the cars in this country run on diesel fuel? Isn't diesel smelly and polluting? Well, that was then. This is now. At the recent Le Mans race in France, Audi won overall with a diesel-powered car. It was faster than everything else out there. It got better fuel consumption. They ran 2 laps more per tankful than the gasoline cars. And the competitive drivers complained that the Audis were so quiet that when they came up to pass them, they couldn't hear them coming. Doesn't sound like any diesel you and I know. Now, diesel doesn't have much of a future in North America, partly because of the lousy image, but partly because by 2009, the emission standards set for diesels are so stringent that even with sulfur-free fuel, current diesel technology cannot meet them. But there was another secret to those Le Mans winning Audis. They ran on a fuel that was 10% something called gas to oil. This is a new diesel fuel that can be made from natural gas. It can even be made by processing coal. Dig the coal out of the ground, process it to extract this fuel from it, stick the coal back in the ground. The fuel is clean, it doesn't have an oily feel, it looks like water, and when you burn it, virtually no pollution. Now, Shell is selling a 10% gas to oil diesel fuel in Europe right now, so it is commercially available. The vehicles can run on 100% gas to oil. The question is obviously economics. But you're looking at the long term, you've got an engine that's faster than gasoline, it may be quieter, it's certainly more fuel efficient, and it may be cleaner. Now, Shell estimates there's enough coal in Wyoming alone to power the North American vehicle fleet for the next 100 years. So while everybody else is talking hybrids and hydrogen and fuel cells, maybe there's a diesel in your future. I'm Jim Kenzie.
As we mentioned earlier, unlike Europeans, North Americans have been reluctant to embrace diesel fuel. Well, a Lexus engineer out of the United States may have put his finger on the problem. He said that today's modern engines are so quiet that even a modern diesel, like the one in his Lexus IS220, would appear to be too noisy. Either way, as the price of gas goes up, diesel, with its lower price and extended mileage, may someday be irresistible. That's it for now. We'll see you next time out as we continue to bring you more stories about cars and the people who drive them.
And here's a further glimpse of what the future could look like. The Saturn Preview concept.
TSN's Motoring 2006 has been brought to you by the new Q from Quaker State. Unleash all your horses. And Michelin, a better way forward.